John, Mr. Mnangagwa has three very difficult tasks now. He has to do something about the dire situation of the economy, which has condemned so many to poverty and desperation. He has to restore some kind of justice in face of these arbitrary arrests. But he did, in some way, reach out to the opposition. He said that there should be a dialogue. He hasn't said that before. So maybe that is the way forward. That's a question I put to the leader of the opposition movement for democratic change.
Look, we have said there is no nation that can be built without dialogue. And this is what we have always been saying. Our biggest problem is that whereas it takes two to tango, we have no one to tango with.
He says he'll tango.
Words are very cheap. We want to see the action, we want to see the deeds.
And he hasn't reached out to you today?
He has not reached out. Look at the killings that are taking place. Look at the terrorizing of people who are members of parliament. Where would you have a member of parliament being treated like a common criminal when they've not committed any offense? So we need to have all these things, release of political prisoners, release of prisoners of conscience, to be able to begin to show concrete steps of goodwill.
We did a very shocking report last night. We came across more than 20 young men, one young woman who had been badly beaten, they said, by the military. Is that an exceptional and unusual thing?
That's just the tip of an iceberg. There's a lot that's happening, particularly during the days of the internet shutdown, the blackout of the media. A lot has happened. People have lost lives, people have lost limb, people are in agony, they've been brutalized, they've had their houses ransacked, invaded by people claiming to be the military or the soldiers. We are yet to ascertain who those people were.
Well, some of what the government says is that those are stolen army uniforms, and it could even be the opposition who are going around beating up people. You're responsible for the violence,
But
they
Lindsay,
say.
do you even believe that? I mean, if you are saying that the protesters stole the helicopters, that would be a first. And if you have a military or a government that is an army that can lose uniforms to protesters, then is that a serious army?
Was any of the violence by the youths who were protesting? Some people say that people are so desperate that they did loot.
Well, look, I wouldn't know what happened because, there was a blackout. But whoever did what was wrong, if it was looting, those are criminal cases that must be opened against those who perpetrated, those crimes. Because we have a constitution in this country. We have to have the rule of law. We must have peace in the country. Every demonstration can be followed by a flowing river of blood. Why should it be?
The young men who we interviewed yesterday, they have been arrested. What would the opposition do about that?
This is what we tell you. Even the victims of violence are further victimized. He is a young man who is not feeling well, who has had injuries, very deep and severe injuries, and is like many others out there. They are then subjected to this kind of inhuman treatment. This is why we are saying that these are serious crimes against humanity. And this has to be dealt with. It has not started now.
How? Dealt with how?
The only way is for the international community to help the people of Zimbabwe.
What about the opposition? What can the opposition do? What are you doing?
What we are doing is to make sure that we are available to provide the leadership of the alternative, condemning the abuses, but also bringing sense into the minds of these other colleagues across the aisle to say it doesn't make sense to terrorize your own people.
The last time I was here, people were dancing in the street. It was when Mugabe fell. What's changed since then?
Whereas Mr. Mugabe was just the old face of an old problem, Mr. Mnangagwa is the new face of an old problem.
And who's in charge of the country?
Terror is in charge of the country. Violence is in charge. Dictatorship is in charge. Tyranny is in charge of Zimbabwe. And that's why we must make sure that we clear the charge of these negative forces to put in place a positive force of peace, a positive force of a government that respects its own people, a government that respects tenets of the rule of law, good governance and democracy.
Well, now, Lindsay, communications with Zimbabwe are very difficult in these troubled times, and you've done miraculously to talk to us so far. Let me ask you this. You mentioned, the mention was made in that interview by the leader of the opposition that the young people you met yesterday with those horrific injuries have now been arrested. What more do you know?
Well, viewers may remember our story from last night of these young people who had been beaten brutally, they say, by the army, who didn't arrest them when they were protesting or anything like that, but went house to house and pulled them out and then attacked them. Well, we heard that this morning these same young people, 28 of them, had been arrested overnight, pulled out of a house where they had been getting medical attention and taken to in Harare. They do have a lawyer, but the lawyer was not allowed to see them, nor was a psychiatrist, nor was a representative of the church. So we don't know what is going to happen to these young people yet. I've seen a warrant which says that they are to be charged with incitement to public violence. They say that they were nothing to do with any protests and that they were pulled out of their houses. The warrant also talks the police would be looking for, including weapons and so on. I certainly saw no weapons in the place where they were yesterday. These are not the only people who are being arrested. There are maybe 600 or 700 people who have been arrested in the last 10 days. Many of them are being denied bail. The human rights lawyers in this country are working overtime. And this is another issue which President Mnangagwa is going to have angry, not just about the economic situation that they find themselves in, but what many Zimbabweans here see as extreme injustice.